Hi, everybody. Very fortunate today to have Gillian joining us from the Northern Star Milk Bank. So they were one of our very early clients, one of the very first that came in and we started working with after we kind of transitioned out of what we were doing with our stay-at-home galas and things like that. So it was definitely an exciting time. But thanks for joining us today, Gillian.
Thanks for having me, Drew.
So yeah, just a good opportunity. I mean, when we first started talking, you guys, I believe you'd never done fundraising with the Northern Star Milk Bank, correct?
Yeah, we'd never had a formal fundraiser of any sort, so this was the first foray into that. So it was definitely a big learning curve, but yeah, working with your team helped us out a ton.
I think it's always really interesting when we start into these and start having those conversations to discover where you're at. What's the traditional event? What have you done in the past? It scared me quite a bit when we first started talking about what is it that we're going to do with you guys, because it was really uncharted territory. Maybe you could share a little bit about just kind of that discovery process that we went through.
Yeah, so we really hadn't done a formal fundraiser of any sort. Like I said, we have what's called a community care fund, and that goes for families that maybe need some financial support to get access to donor human milk once the baby is out of the hospital. So when the child's in the hospital, the milk is paid for, but once they're out, it's actually quite a substantial cost to the family. And we had never had to do any fundraising for this before, but with the effects of COVID-19 and everything, we were really behind on that fund. And so we really wanted to be able to top that back up. So we were able to continue supporting families that way.
Um, I know when we finished this one and looked back, it almost seems easy of like all the pieces that happen and just kind of how the final product, how it looked. But um, what would have been a win for you guys for an outcome from this event?
Well, we just wanted to, like, I think we had initially said our goal would only be $1,000. We ended up raising it to 50,000 because we got quite a few some sponsorships on, and then by the time all was said and done, we ended up with over $70,000 in our community care fund. So that was amazing, and like we really had no idea what to expect, having never done a fundraiser like this. So I mean, it's been a great learning experience now because we now have some of those relationships built, which we can use for future events too.
Yeah, and it's exciting when we get into the multiple events. Do you guys think that there's another event in the future, another virtual gala?
I think there will be some sort of event in the future. We're going to have to be moving locations at some point. So that always ends up costing a lot, especially with, the freezer spaces and like special requirements we need with our labs. So that could be a future fundraiser. It could go back to the community care fund, just depending how we're doing with that. Like, I definitely think that now we kind of have a benchmark in place and know what's possible. I think we would be a lot more likely to continue doing something like that.
And how did you find, talking about costs, how did you find, I guess maybe we haven't done a lot of traditional events before, but the cost of actually running this event, or the risk of going in and putting it on?
Well, I know when, Jeanette and I were talking, she's our executive director, we thought it'd be a fairly low risk event model because, it's all online. We're not having to rent out a space. We're not having to think about bringing like catering in and the cost of the space, the cost of the entertainment, and all those other pieces that come from having like a physical event. We just really were like, okay, if we can do it online and there's the support to help us with the tech pieces of it, because that was what we were mostly concerned about, then it felt pretty low risk and like something that could only really be beneficial.
Yeah, the it's interesting having done events in the background, or in my history of events and working with them, and looking at now, you're like, okay, like all the costs. We're talking with one of our partners about moving the date, and we're like, oh, and you're like, oh, you literally just changed the date. it's everything kind of just makes sense at that point. But so it's been interesting to see the lowered threshold that goes with it. Um, what would you say, I know we went through ticket sales, sponsorship, silent auction, pieces like that. What kind of areas do you think that we added value from the fundraising team?
I think just like I said, being our first event, we didn't have a lot of we just didn't know what all went into doing a fundraising event. And even without it being in a physical location, there's still a lot of moving parts. And so the fact that you guys had experience with especially these types of events and could kind of direct us to sponsorship templates and how to reach out for silent auction items and actually getting the technical setup of those as well, that was really helpful for us. And the big one for us was handling the tech pieces on the night itself, because that was something we were just we were just a little afraid to dive into.
I still have that intimidation going into it every night. You're like, okay, this is all the things, they're all here. They all have to go off. And so it's still exciting for us every time that we go in and do it. How did you find the night of?
We thought it went really smoothly from a tech perspective. And even the feedback we got was that everything flowed really well. It was the right amount of time. It wasn't a super long drawn out event. We had ours it was just over an hour. And that seemed to kind of be the sweet spot for our audience anyways. Mm-hmm. And there really wasn't any point where it was like, oh no, something's not working. What do we do? Because we knew we had that support with you guys working in the background and putting all the pieces together.
There was a bit of excitement, when one of the key sponsors who is going to be awarding or introducing one of the presenters, he wasn't on the call, and we're going back and forth in emails and calls and trying to get it all worked out. So it was exciting, but
didn't even know that had happened. So there we go.
I'll have to share that stuff with you guys. When you look at it, I guess maybe how did you find us? Why did you choose us?
So we had come across you, I believe, through one of our board members had seen a similar type of event through the Stay at Home Gala team and Trellis. And I can't remember what event it was, but she had suggested us doing something like that. And the more we kind of looked into it and kind of learned the process, like I said, the more it seemed fairly risk-free, because of the benefits you guys are able to provide with, and just not having to have all those extra components of doing a large scale gala in a physical location. So we were just really intrigued by the idea. It'll be interesting to see whether these virtual galas continue going on, because I think it's a lot easier. So
do you think, and this is more of a spectator's opinion, did you have fun watching? And would you go attend more virtual galas yourself?
I actually thought the evening flew by. I thought, even having been part of the planning and everything, it just seemed like it was well organized. It felt like there wasn't any one person that was kind of dragging on, and it felt like, yeah, this is a good way to do something while you're at home, from the comfort of your own home. I know we got some feedback that people were making dinner and doing spin classes and still hopping on to learn how to do the line dancing. They were just participating in what sections they were able to around, their family schedule and everything else as well. So that's kind of fun. It's normally when you're going to something like this, it's a full evening commitment. Sometimes, it ends up being a lot more if you have to arrange for babysitters, a lot of our, our target audience would have to do. So yeah, I would definitely do something like this again.
It's always good to hear. We've kind of gone through and looked at, a bit of the process and the meetings and things like that. But do you have anything that you would add for anybody that's listening or watching this when they're looking at either virtual galas or working with our team?
I think if it's something that you are interested in, it definitely for us really proved to be worthwhile. It was, knowing we had that support and that we weren't having to do it completely on our own, like that would have been really overwhelming for us. I think it was overwhelming enough as it was, but knowing that like if we had questions, we could turn to Drew and his team, not having to handle the actual technical components of the event itself, and just knowing that there was, they have this great laid out like guidebook essentially of all the different things that you need for an event like this, which we wouldn't have even known where to start if we were doing it on our own. So definitely added value there.
Well, we're happy we were able to, and it ended up being a lot of fun. I remember sitting and watching the show, and being there, and you're seeing it happening, and everything kind of went nice and smoothly. And then afterwards, then it was like this big sigh of relief and this excitement, and looking at it, and especially from our very first conversations, and we weren't confident enough with kind of working with a new partner of like, the donations and making sure that we, it's like, oh, it's a first time event, and we don't want to waste your money. And then just really excited by the end of it of how it all went. And yeah, over 70,000. I mean, it far exceeded kind of what our wildest dreams were. So.
And us too, like we didn't even know what was really realistic because we hadn't done any sort of event like this. And I think like that was what you were talking about too, is there was no, benchmark to kind of go off of. But I mean, for us, it was definitely well worth the investment to work with you guys, because that was really the only cost we had with this event.
Now, you guys really kind of crushed it with sponsorship. What was their feedback, and what were the things that they were excited about? And because that took off way more than, I think we originally were shooting for maybe $25,000 in sponsorship.
It just seemed like once we started, getting the word out amongst like relationships that we already had, that people were really interested. They knew that it was like a good cause. Maybe people didn't fully understand the extent of what the milk bank did. And once people started realizing like where this money was going to go and who it was going to be helping, there was a lot of interest in it. And, the feedback we've gotten so far from our sponsors has been like, they're down to do partner with us again in the future for future events. And so that's great. Now we're not starting from zero like we were with this event.
Yeah. Well, maybe we revisit the conversation in the spring for another gala and see if you guys are up for it by that point.
Yeah. We'll have time to have rested and recovered by then.
Yeah. Well, and unless you have anything that you feel like you'd like to add or anything like that, just really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and everyone who may be watching this.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Drew.
All right. Thank you so much, Gillian.